She was 26 years old, standing on a dirt road in the middle of Wyoming, eating dried-up berries off a dead bush. No money. No plan. Shoes worn straight through. Everything she owned stuffed into one bag. Most people in that situation give up. Norah Cassidy was not most people. This is a story about a woman who had nothing left, and used exactly that to build everything. Not a rags-to-riches fantasy. Not some lucky break. A real story of what happens when quiet competence meets the right moment. And I promise you, by the end of this, you'll never look at a small opportunity the same way again. 3 days of walking had taken everything from Norah, her energy, her hope, almost her dignity. Her husband had died and left behind nothing but debt. The town of Grover had nothing for her. So she walked. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she couldn't stay still. That's when the horse stopped. A rancher named Ellis Brand looked down at her from the saddle. He didn't say much. He looked at the berries in her hand, looked at her face, and he saw exactly what she was. Someone who had been through it. Someone still standing. He climbed down, held his hat, and asked her the 4 words that would change both their lives. Can you cook for 2? Not charity. Not pity. A job. And Norah, who had once fed 20 ranch hands at her mother's boarding house without breaking a sweat, stood up straight and said, I can cook for 20. She was hired on the spot. The ranch house was a disaster. You know that feeling when you walk into a place and you can tell nobody's actually lived there in years? That was Ellis's kitchen. Cold stove. Stale grease on every surface. A flour bin with almost nothing in it. Most people would have walked back out. Norah rolled up her sleeves. Here's something I want you to think about. There's a difference between seeing a mess and seeing a project. Norah walked into that kitchen and didn't see neglect, she saw potential. She saw work, and work was exactly what she needed. That shift in perspective. That's not luck. That's a survival skill. She scrubbed that kitchen until her arms ached. Then she found half a bag of beans, a piece of salt pork, and an onion starting to sprout. She made soup. She ate it alone at the clean table. First hot meal in a week. She said it tasted like salvation. And honestly, it probably did. When Ellis came in that evening, he found a plate waiting and a kitchen transformed. He ate every bite. Wiped the bowl clean with the cornbread. Then he simply said, the hands come in tomorrow. 12 of them. It wasn't a question. It was an offer of trust. From that first supper, beef stew thick with vegetables, biscuits so fluffy they barely touched the plate, the whole ranch started to shift. The men argued less. The work got tighter. A good meal in a man's belly, Norah had learned long ago, does something to his mind too. It settles him. Reminds him that someone cared enough to make something real. That's not a small thing. That's the foundation of a functioning community. Ellis noticed all of it. He was a man of few words, but he watched everything. He noticed the men wiping their boots before coming inside. He noticed the way they spoke to Norah with a kind of rough respect they gave almost no one else. He noticed that the house, empty and hollow for 5 years since his wife had died, was breathing again. And he noticed her. The way she kneaded dough with her full attention. The way she pushed her dark hair back with her wrist when her hands were full. He had hired a cook. He was beginning to understand he'd found something else entirely. He started leaving small signs. Fixed the loose porch board she stepped over 100 times a day. Sharpened every kitchen knife to a razor edge. One afternoon, a bucket of fresh apples appeared by the door. Thought you could use these, was all he said. The next day, a deep dish apple pie appeared at supper. Flaky golden crust. Cinnamon filling. When Ellis took his first bite, he closed his eyes. It tasted like a life he thought he'd lost for good. Now here's the part nobody sees coming. One crisp October afternoon, a black buggy pulled up to the ranch. A man in a city suit climbed out, smooth, confident, the kind of man who counts other people's money and smiles while doing it. His name was Sterling. He was from a bank in Cheyenne. And he had come to take Ellis's ranch. The loan for the new breeding stock was coming due. Beef prices were dropping. Sterling had done the math and liked his odds. He offered to buy the note back at a discount, and take the land as collateral. It was legal. It was predatory. And Ellis was cornered. He could feel the eyes of his ranch hands watching from the kitchen doorway. The shame of it sat like a stone in his chest. He was about to tell Sterling to get off his land when Norah walked in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron, completely calm. She ignored the banker. She walked straight to the desk in the corner and opened the land ledger. Sterling told her this was private business. She kept reading. Here's what Norah had noticed that nobody else had, not even Ellis. All season, she'd been carrying the kitchen scraps out toward a small pasture by the creek. Potato peelings. Soured milk. Leftover bread. She'd been quietly, consistently feeding 11 undersized steers that had been left off the fall drive because they weren't big enough to fetch a decent price. 2 months of kitchen scraps. 2 months of no one paying attention. And those 11 runts? They weren't runts anymore. She did the math out loud, pencil moving across the page. 11 prime steers at current Cheyenne prices covered the note with $40 left over. She pushed the ledger across the table to Sterling. Clear handwriting. Clean numbers. Undeniable. The banker stared at the page. Then at her. He had come here expecting a simple rancher and an easy win. He had not expected the cook to outthink him with kitchen scraps and compound arithmetic. He grabbed his papers and left. The ranch hands let out a quiet cheer. Ellis didn't look at them. He looked only at Norah. She had saved his home, his life's work, his entire future, with leftovers and a clear head. She had seen value in the things everyone else had written off. She had turned what was there into what was needed. That night, Ellis couldn't sleep. He lay in the dark and finally saw what had been in front of him the whole time. Since his wife had died, he'd been running the ranch on memory and muscle. Doing the work, but not building toward anything. Not living. Norah had arrived like rain on dry ground. She hadn't just fed his crew. She had fed him, his sense of purpose, his hope, his reason to care about tomorrow. He made a decision before the sun came up. The next morning, the first snow of the season had fallen overnight, soft and clean and quiet. Norah was on the back porch with a cup of coffee, watching it come down. Ellis stood beside her for a long moment, not speaking, just sharing the stillness of a new day. Then he said what needed saying. He told her he wasn't a man with many words. Told her he'd been missing the important things, watching fences and cattle while something rare was right in front of him. He told her the fall gather was over. Her job was done for the season. And he told her he didn't want her to leave. Not for the winter. Permanently. As his wife. The porch went quiet. Snow kept falling. Norah took a slow sip of her coffee, because of course she did. Then she smiled. "I was hoping you'd get around to it, Ellis," she said. "You're a good man, but you are a slow one." 5 years later, Ellis and Norah sat on that same porch in the evening light, watching their 3-year-old son chase a toy horse through the dust. The boy stumbled, sat down hard, looked at his hands, brushed them off with total seriousness, and got right back up without a single tear. "He has your resilience," Ellis said. "And your slowness," Norah replied. Took him a full minute to decide to get up. Ellis laughed. Actually laughed, low and warm and real. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun went down, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her. The life they had built wasn't built on grand gestures or perfect moments. It was built the way Norah built everything, with steady hands, a clear eye for what was actually there, and the patience to turn it into something worth keeping. Some people wait their whole lives for a lucky break. Norah Cassidy walked out of a dead-end town with a carpet bag and empty pockets, and she made her own. The question isn't whether you'll ever get a chance. The question is, will you recognize it when it looks like a dirty kitchen and a handful of withered berries? Because sometimes, that's exactly what a new life looks like.